Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Stephen Greer. I am here with Matty Roberts, and we're going to have a conversation for about an hour about what people call in pop culture Area 51 and what Matty did to organize a lot of interest in this subject. And so I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, Matty. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. It's going to be really interesting to see all these answers or questions that I've had answered.
Yeah. Well, how did you get interested in the subject? I mean, how long have you been following it?
I've been following it for quite a while, but what kind of triggered me to make that event was watching the Joe Rogan podcast where he had 𝗬𝗲𝗯 and 𝗬𝗲𝗃𝗀𝗃𝗀 on there.
Mm-hmm.
So after watching that, I decided to just do some more research online, and then I decided to make a joke on Facebook, and it just completely caught on fire.
Mm-hmm. Oh, about storming Area 51.
Yeah.
Ah, got it. Cool. Yeah, I've actually been there, and but years ago, there used to be a CNN host called Larry King. He had Larry King Live, so he had me out there at Nellis Air Force Base, so-called Area 51, on a set just outside the base, and so it was a lot, and it was filmed with the backdrop was the Nellis Range and Area 51. And it was a pretty cool show, and it was actually the most watched special he had ever done. And this was a long time ago. This was 1994.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess before you were born, maybe. I don't know. I'm just teasing you, but it was
Definitely
great. And one of the stories I like telling about that is in the green room after the show, which is where you go before or after a show. I was with Larry King, and during the show, he had asked me, he said, well, what does the president know about this? And at that time, it was Bill Clinton. And I said, well, I really can't comment on that. I shouldn't comment on that. You should ask the president. Because he used to have the president on his show a lot.
Yeah. Would you be able to comment on that now, though? Because I'm kind of interested. Yeah,
I will, because what had happened is that he said, well, what does that mean? And then this is where we're being filmed. And there was a nuclear physicist on the show with me on the stage. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, it means you should ask the president and not me. And then so after the show, Larry said, what the hell were you talking about? Why did you? I said, because I put the briefing together for Bill Clinton and had briefed within the past 12 months of when that show was aired. I had briefed his first CIA director personally, privately.
Okay.
And the CIA director's name was R. James Woolsey. And at that time, I was doing this very much quietly because I'm an emergency doctor. I was doing this in my spare time because I had contacts and had put together a briefing document, which we called the best available evidence, that dealt with all the evidence related to UFOs, extraterrestrial intelligence, covert programs. I mean, it was a very serious, 500 and some page document that we had put together, but I was still in the process. So I said, I told Larry, he said, you should have said that on the show. I said, I can. It would have burned all my bridges. But now I can talk about it because that was a long time ago.
I was back in 94, so it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So actually the briefing for the CIA director was on December 13th, 1993.
Okay.
So as you know, Clinton took office in January of 93.
Yes.
And so it goes. But we actually did that show right there at the so-called Area 51 out in the desert near the little alien that was actually there then. It was hilarious. But we had a good time. And subsequently, I already knew what was at that facility, but since then, I've gotten a great deal more information. So I know you probably have a lot of questions because, you organize that whole movement, which kudos to you for getting so many people interested. I think it's awesome. Frankly, we need more folks like you to do that and get the word out.
Accidentally made it popular to talk about aliens, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It's not something a lot of people can say.
Yeah. That's great.
So having been out there, are you familiar with George Knapp at all?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I knew all those guys back when that happened. And also there's a fellow, Bob Lazar, and that Now remember, the reporters and Bob Lazar was only there for a very short time.
Yeah.
And he had a limited access. So the people I have in my team are some folks who've worked that system for, been in the facility for a decade or more, et cetera, and so on. So at this point, the Disclosure Project, which I founded in the 90s, now has about 900 or so military whistleblowers and people like Lazar who've been in those projects.
That's
but
impressive.
Not just at that facility, but at all of them. And not just domestically, but in Great Britain and Australia and other countries. So
how many facilities would you say total on the planet currently?
Oh, there are dozens, and they're important ones. One thing about this facility that you're referring to, Area 51, which, by the way, is the number on a grid over the big, huge Nellis, the Nevada Test Range is what it's called properly, and Nellis Air Force Base. So you have Nellis Air Force Base, you have the Nevada Test Range where a lot of nuclear tests went on, and there's a part of that huge area of the desert, and the grid, it's a whole bunch of different grids, and the grid where a lot of the sensitive facilities are underground are in that Area 51. But
yes,
the term,
Site 4, right?
Yeah, well, the really sensitive facilities are S4, S9, S12, Pahut Mesa, Groom Lake. And those facilities, the ones that are related to extraterrestrial devices that are studied, all of those are underground. So
how far underground would you say they are?
Hundreds to thousands of feet, very deep underground. They're not 20, 30 feet.
That's a big project.
And they're connected to tunnels from there that connect to Edwards Air Force Base out in the high desert of California, and connect out to other facilities all underground. So those systems travel at enormous speeds. I know people who've gone underground at Edwards and a few minutes later surface at the Nevada range.
Wow, that's a really long distance.
Yes, and of course these are very fast underground transport systems, and these are honeycombed all through various places in the United States, and a number of these classified, properly termed, unacknowledged special access project facilities are connected to each other. And even in this area where I live, there's a place in a mountain north of me here that's where the continuity of government is run, where if there's, for example, a nuclear bomb goes off in DC and wipes out the entire government, 24 hours a day, there's an underground facility where there are people who are placeholders for the president, vice president, all the cabinet members operating underground.
That way we still have a government in case of a
in case a catastrophe happens. Yeah. So, and that's been in existence since at least the 50s or 60s. So that's all underground.
Cold War idea.
Yeah. Well, it's for that and other things. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't understand about the Nellis facility is that's an old facility. The really cool state-of-the-art stuff is near Dugway in Utah, out in the desert. Okay. The Dugway Proving Grounds, and there's a massive underground facility. It's newer, probably even older, of course, than the facility in Nevada, so-called Area 51, is the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where a lot of the material from Roswell was taken. And that facility is quite old. It was the old Air Force Foreign Technology Division.
Would you say that was one of the original facilities?
Yes, that was one of the original facilities, but the Nevada range was a very old one, as well as is Los Alamos. And there's a facility out in Arizona near Tombstone, where Army Intelligence Headquarters is at Fort Huachuca. And there's a large underground complex there. There are 9 separate, I have a man who worked in that facility some years ago, and there were 9 extraterrestrial vehicles underground and an area where they had autopsied various ET bodies that were in storage, in permanent storage, and that he had worked in that facility. But that's out in the eastern Arizona desert near Fort Huachuca. And a lot of people don't realize that's the headquarters for Army intelligence is there.
Okay. Well, I have a question too. Why do you think, I know you brush up on this in the new movie, but why do you think that the government has kind of kept this all secret? Do you believe it's just to push an agenda for it?
Yeah, well, this is, for folks listening, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind came out about a month ago, a little over, and it's, it's #1 on all the platforms right now. It's a movie that the first part of which deals with the secret agenda of why the government has maintained secrecy, but what they're planning to do. And that has to do with the reason I never use the word alien, by the way, is that most people don't know whether you're talking about an ET or someone from Guatemala or somebody, or something from another dimension. So most people in this UFO space, when they use the word alien, they don't understand that they're usually talking about a non-extraterrestrial interdimensional being that they've had an experience with. So it's complex, and the problem with a term like alien, it's sort of a catch-all, and it doesn't really mean anything. Now, most people use it thinking ET, but in reality, it's become something that's used to describe all kinds of phenomena, like that showed Stranger Things.
Yeah,
basically based on stuff that happened at Montauk, which is a facility out on eastern part of Long Island, and so that's why I'm very specific when I'm talking about extraterrestrial biological entities, or EBEs or EBENs. There are those that have been stored also at so-called Area 51.
Okay.
Now, there's two kinds. There's a big horseshoe-shaped underground facility that is connected to the ET research project, studying the craft, their propulsion systems, all that. And then there are some above ground facilities that are the so-called ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, which are the man-made UFOs, which is usually what people see zipping around. I'm questioning whether the Pentagon footage that was officially confirmed this a couple weeks ago, released and all over the news, of those jet fighters chasing those UFOs off the California coast.
Yeah,
that actually may be one of ours. We're chasing, but the people who are in the conventional military, Air Force, Navy, even conventional CIA and Pentagon intelligence would not be read into or briefed on the fact that we have things that move like that. Those are highly classified. And so those are also, a number of them are based at so-called Area 51. So you have both man-made, and I have this wonderful document. It's very interesting. I'll just show it. I don't know if people can see it. It's actually in my book, Unacknowledged, but it's signed by, look at the name and look at the letterhead. It's Ben Rich of the Lockheed Skunk Works. And this is dated July 21st, 1986. And he states in this document that there are two types of what people call UFOs, extraterrestrial and ours. So, that was, 34 years ago, almost. So we have had man-made things that look like UFOs, functional, since around the mid-1950s.
How would you say a conventional craft works?
They're using very high voltage systems, VHV it's called, that causes an electromagnetic field that alters the matter of, say, a spacecraft and everyone on it in a way that it loses mass. So you have to get into spin theory and a lot of advanced concepts in physics, which is just not the place for that.
Yeah.
But basically, what it does is a very high voltage system at a certain resonance, certain cycles per second, can cause something that's a solid object like this phone to become lighter than air. And it actually causes what's called mass cancellation. So these are called, the pop culture would call it anti-gravity. It's not actually anti-gravity, it's 𝗲𝗏𝗪𝒻𝑔ravitics. It means the electromagnetic field applied in a certain field area around a craft and within it causes the craft and everyone on board to become without mass. Now, if it becomes zero mass, it disappears in front of you, dematerializes.
Okay, so
if it's partially affected, it can move at enormous speed. So that's why you can see these objects moving at 200,000-300,000 miles per hour and make a right-hand turn without killing everyone on board, because it's controlling from one gravitational field, no matter how it's moving, because on the internal, if you're on the craft, it actually feels like a normal gravitational field. But the object is moving through the atmosphere, or if it goes into space, at enormous velocity and can move straight up, straight down, left and right with no inertia, with no pulling like you would in a jet plane or a car or something.
Yeah, because it makes its own gravity. So it would just be like me sitting in this chair and moving over there.
Yeah, exactly. So they can correct for that. Now, it took them a long time to get it that developed for man-made ones. Now, interstellar vehicles, of course, do this routinely, and they're going beyond the speed of light through other dimensions. And the difficulty that people have with this subject is that they will see a phenomenon and they don't have enough information to know whether they're seeing an ET object or a man-made UFO.
Yeah, because to them it's just
something else. Yeah, you have to know what to look for. I'll give you your audience a little tip. If there are any structural parts, if there's a seam, a rivet, a bolt, a part, it's man-made.
Okay.
The interstellar ones are utterly and completely seamless. You can't even see how you could get in or out of one. They are without, and there's a whole physics behind these, how these objects are manufactured, that would be your nice straight hair would sort of curl if I start getting into this. But I don't have enough hair to curl anymore. But
give me some of mine. I've got a little bit.
Yeah, you got plenty to spare, dude. So I think that's a really interesting thing to sort of contemplate. The whole movie, the whole premise of Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, which I hope you guys will look at. Have you seen it yet?
Yeah, I've actually watched it twice now. I watched it just this morning.
It was good.
Great. I really like how it kind of focuses on the spirituality of everything and how they're almost extra dimensional beings in a way.
Mm-hmm. Well, we all are. See, that's the other thing. People think that's so alien. Humans are interdimensional beings. Here's the proof. You can sit in your room there and quietly center your consciousness and travel in consciousness to another place. You can have a lucid dream where you fall asleep at night and you can see a distant place or a distant point in time in the future. So that's what a lucid precognitive dream is. And you want to know why that little area of the Area 51 is called Dreamland?
I would, actually. I've been very curious about that.
Yeah, it's not known by a lot of people. So when they were testing these systems and they had human pilots, human beings in these test systems, when they hit a certain resonant field where the object could, quote, dematerialize and teleport, move, the experience of it is as if you were in a hyper lucid dream. For the physical, like you physically, now imagine your whole physical body and with your body of light, as it were, your spiritual body shifting into that sort of lucid dream world that you see in a really clear flying dream like that.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the subjective experience. And I know some men who were early test pilots of these objects. And it's quite interesting because it's very dreamy. Even though it's a physics. Now there's a science and physics behind it that you have to understand. It isn't hocus pocus. And of course we understand that very well now. People who work with this a long time. But it helps to understand, if you understand spiritual consciousness and meditation and the body of light and the ability to remote view distant places, you're going to start going a long way to understanding how these interstellar actual ET civilizations are traveling, communicating, etc. Because we always think that everything is separate. In reality, you and I are sitting in our physical bodies on a 3D planet, but we also have our conscious being within ourselves, our body of light and our consciousness. And all of that is integrated into a singularity of the field of unbounded conscious existence. And the entire cosmos, if you go out tonight, look at the stars, everything you're looking at is actually the field of consciousness resonating as a star or a photon or a tree or your body. It's all consciousness, 100%. But it's resonating at a frequency that materializes whatever it is. Whatever
that's
that
a lot to wrap your head around. That's really cool. How would you say that you kind of came to understanding that?
Well, I came to understand it because I experienced it. When I was 17, I got very sick and I died. And when I died, I had an experience of these other dimensions very, very clearly. And it was beautiful. And when I came back, I decided, you know what? I need to learn to meditate and figure out what's going on here. So on my 18th birthday, I learned meditation and began to have those experiences a lot. And then a few months later, what I recount briefly in this movie, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I was on a mountain up in North Carolina and so right before sunset, saw this ET craft that I had seen when I was 8 or 9. Same thing. It looked like the same. And it was there and it literally didn't move off. It just was materialized and then dematerialized, like just gone. I went, oh, that's cool. They're back. I mean, I was 18. I didn't think. So I sit down, I'm meditating at sunset on the top of this 5,000 some foot mountain up in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And I go into that deep meditative state of samadhi, the sort of the unbounded conscious field state. And it was a long meditation. I then came out of it and it was pitch dark and the whole Milky Way galaxy was above my head. And I looked up and it was like a voice that emerged from space that said, behold, what a beautiful universe God has made. And at that, I went straight back in that state when I died. And when I had died, I had become, sort of had this cosmic consciousness experience of the entire cosmos as me, this awake being. And my little, what was, I thought.
Is that what you would consider a God of sorts then?
Well, I mean, it's those terms are loaded, but it's the unbounded aspect of the cosmic mind, the cosmic being.
Okay.
So, and everyone can experience that. You don't have to drop dead to do it. I happen to. But I think it's because I was raised in a way that we didn't understand any of this. I mean, I was not raised in a family that discussed these things. So what happened was that then, I turned and there was an ET craft right below the crest of the hill, and there was an ET being that touched me on my right shoulder, and I dematerialized and ended up on the craft and developed the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols. And I was 18. I didn't know what I was ever going to do with them, and of course here we are. But it led me onto this path, and it was really interesting. But it was all centered in understanding the science of consciousness, which about 2/3 of the movie, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, is dealing with higher states of consciousness, meditation, and how the conscious field can affect matter and random number generators and communication systems. Because the big secret the intelligence community doesn't want anyone to know is that we don't need to storm Area 51 physically. We can just go there in our consciousness.
That's interesting. So is that what you would say that would be your method of storming Area 51?
Well, that's what I've done. And we can go anywhere we want to go. Now, let's talk about the facility in 3D for a moment.
Okay.
When I heard this concept, Storm Area 51, I said, Lord have mercy. People don't know what they're stepping into here, because this is going to be bad news. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context. Back in 2009, when Barack Obama became president, I was asked to put together a briefing document for him. And I'm going to show you a document that's the very first top secret document that was on that stack of documents for the president. But there was a guy who was sort of a bag man for the CIA, who was a kind of a wild guy. I mean, he was like a contractor. And someone at the agency wanted me to sort of include this guy in some of the information for the president for this briefing. And he said, look, we need to put in there that the President Obama should storm Area 51 and seize those facilities that he's being denied access to. Because if you saw the movie Unacknowledged, it's on Netflix, you know that the president is usually not given access to this level of information.
Yeah.
Which is why the default position has been us putting information together for these presidents since Clinton. But this guy literally wanted me to recommend that the president, at that time, Obama, go tactical, meaning using tactical nuclear weapons to take over Area 51 and get it back under legal constitutional control. Now,
what would be the outlash of that?
It would have never worked, and because he didn't know what I'm about to tell you, since you organized Storm Area 51. And everyone listening, listen very carefully. First of all, the things that you need to worry about, nothing important is above the surface of the Earth. It's all underground or it's in space. Number two, the underground facility, to get in there are nuclear bomb-proof blast doors. But if anyone were to be able to breach the area, they have underneath the facility, deep underneath, tactical nuclear weapons and bigger ones. And on top of the facility, on top of the underground facility, very powerful conventional explosives that are like the bunker busting bombs. And so if anyone let me finish. If anyone were to penetrate that facility, they would detonate the bunker busters on top and the nukes underneath, pancake it. The whole thing would collapse. And I know this for a personal fact. I know the people who actually worked on, designed the security around the Sandia National Labs facility, Monsanto, this area in Nevada where 𝗬𝗏, Mesa, Groom Lake, S3, S4, S12, S9, Groom Lake. And so those facilities you're not going to get into, and the President of the United States isn't going to get in there. So you cannot. Now, what you can do, every single person who's a conscious, intelligent, living form of life on Earth, which would be humans and dolphins, perhaps, and others, can enter into a state of consciousness, make contact with these ETs, and vector them, invite them to come into an area. So, if you wanted to, you could surround the desert around Area 51, make direct contact with the ETs, and there'd be nothing they could do about it. Because if you understand that these civilizations can appear in various forms, they don't have to be materialized like a 747 jetliner. They can be around you and in a form that almost looks like a hologram or an energy field. And they can blip in and out of this dimension in a fraction of a second. So if you look at the film, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and by the way, people who are really into this, if you go to iTunes or Vimeo and you buy the film, there are some special features, bonus features. One of them is a collage, and it's like 25, 28 minutes of just one photo and video after another of these close encounters of the fifth kind that we've had happen around the world, where these objects have come in. And they're amazing because you'll see some where the object will be right here, it dematerializes, it appears here. And you can see them sort of bleed in and out of space-time. So what we're planning to do with close encounters of the fifth kind is organize at least 1% of the world's population. So it'd be around 75 to 80 million people.
Yeah.
Who learn how to make contact and then just overwhelm the intelligence community and the military. And that is how we're going to storm Area 51 and also every other facility. We don't have to physically go in there. We just bypass them. We just say, we already know what they have. So we can talk for hours about what's in each facility and how they're operating. And they're all over the place. I have over 980 top secret military, corporate intelligence people who've been in these facilities and programs over the years. And about once a week, a new person surfaces who contacts me.
Okay.
So imagine 985 𝗏𝗏𝗍𝗏s, but people who weren't just there for a couple of weeks, but worked for years or a decade or two in those facilities.
That's a large Rolodex of people.
It's a huge number of people. Yeah. Now, not all of them want to come public the way Bob did, and good for him for doing so. However, a lot of them have. I think we have about, on my YouTube channel, I think there are like a few dozen, 5 or 6 dozen of these people who've been involved over the years in various ways. The ones that are most intimately involved and most recently are terrified to come forward. But they certainly have given us enough information to know what's where. And I know from doing close encounters of the fifth kind with people all over the world that every single human being can go into a quiet state of mind, learn to remote view or see with their consciousness where these ET craft are and make contact with them. And if you do it in a way that isn't centered in superstition and stupid fear-based stuff, and that's why you were asking me the first part of the movie, the reason we put that in there at the beginning, where we're exposing this fake alien threat,
is to show that they're not a threat.
Well, they're not a threat. I mean, look, anyone with an IQ over, 50 should figure out that if these were hostile and we started detonating atomic weapons in the 40s, well, all we had were vacuum tubes and rockets and jets and stuff. They would have completely shut this civilization down about 1945.
Yeah.
We haven't. Now, the flip side of it is that there are many, many different ET civilizations. And there are a number of them that are involved with what I call security enforcement, which means a planet like ours that's primitive, violent, warring, destroying its biosphere, have weapons of mass destruction. We're going into space with weapons on satellites that are killer satellites. They don't want us banging around out in space too far. And so those are trying to keep things under control until we become peaceful. And this idea of a level 1 civilization where we're peaceful, we're not killing each other, we're not destroying the biosphere, we have free energy, 0-point energy, and we're not going into space like the science fiction movies with lasers blazing. So the human endeavor has to transform from a world of division and war into one of universal peace. Okay. That's the price of admission to going out in space is that you're civilized, which we are not.
And would you say that the ETs are trying to help us down along that universal path?
They are, but they're doing it in a way that is nuanced. Obviously, if they were to just, Larry King asked me, I think every talk show host asked me, why don't they land on the White House lawn? That's a boring question, but I go, yeah, whose White House? Ours, the one in Colombia, South America, the Kremlin. We don't have a functional civilization on this planet yet. And number two, if they tried to, they'd be blown out of the sky. Bang.
Yeah.
All right. So, and not with conventional weapons, with electromagnetic weapons that go faster than the speed of light. So one of the problems, and this is a big problem, is that there are these unacknowledged special access projects, USAPs, that are so covert that it's very rare for a president or a CIA director to be told about all of them. What I've tried to do is put a mosaic together, a puzzle together from hundreds of sources of people who've been in them that are very credible, and come up with an assessment, which is, you know, what we're doing. And to the extent we can do that to the public, that's why we're doing these documentaries. But ultimately, we need the help of the public. We need people like you organizing, lots of folks who are, you know, I tell anyone between the ages of maturity and senility, which is hopefully most of us, need to come together and demand that this subject be disclosed. But we have to take the lead and make contact with these civilizations, because if we the people of planet Earth that are peaceful, who are enlightened, who understand the power of the science of consciousness, if we don't organize to do this, who is? It isn't going to be the president. It's not going to be the UN Secretary General. I briefed all these sort of people, and they don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, because as Bill Clinton's best friend said to me after I put this briefing together for him, he said, "We're convinced the president will be assassinated like Jack Kennedy if he pushes on this." And so, of course, I asked, well, what the hell do you want me to do? I'm an emergency doctor. I'm an ER doctor. He says, yeah, but we think you can do it. And what he really meant, I looked him right in the eye. I said, really, what you're saying to me is I'm expendable, and it doesn't matter if they kill me, because I'm a nobody. I'm not a significant figure at all. And if I get rubbed out, it doesn't matter, but you can't afford to lose another president. And he looked me right in the eye. He says, yes, you're expendable. So I always tell people I'm the throwaway guy. It doesn't really matter if I am terminated or not. And I actually view myself that way, to be honest with you. It's just, you know, you just have to accept that that's the possibility and not be afraid of it, which I'm not, luckily, because I had this near-death experience, and then these experiences in higher consciousness and cosmic awareness. These buffoons don't frighten me. What is that clacking sound?
I'm not entirely sure. I can hear it on my end as well.
It's strange. I wonder if it's some kind of electronic irritation. I'm not touching anything, I promise.
I'm not either.
It's some kind of weirdness going on here. It's like, sounds like someone's in a control room tapping that we're hearing. Anyway.
Maybe they don't want us talking about this.
Yeah, they don't. I know they don't want me to talk about a lot of stuff. So we're getting into some of the deep end of the pond here. So, but so that's what we need to do. At some point, I've always thought it'd be awesome to organize a huge outdoor music conference with a lot of the big, like Katy Perry, who follows this stuff, and Godsmacked, and Steven Tyler of Aerosmith, and all these people who are really following what we're doing, and organize some big event where we'd have, a few 100,000 people outside, and do a mass contact CE5 contact and disclosure event, and then live stream it to another, 50 million people. I mean, that's really what we need to do, but I don't have the ability to organize something like that, I'm afraid. But what
about organizing something like Storm Washington? We all gather together.
Yeah. Well, I have a home in Washington. That good luck there too. Get a permit on the downtown, on the National Mall, and organize something. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
That'd be cool. So if somebody could organize it, if they'll build it, I'll come. If you build it, I'll come. But I don't know. I don't know how to make an event like that happen. Maybe our friend Chris does. Anyway, my point is that in lieu,
we could do this.
Okay, let's do it, man. I'll do it. You do it. Well, I'll be there. I'll bring a lot of stuff to that. I mean, it'll be bitching awesome.
Well, I can't lie to you. We've already started, so I'll fill you in on the details later.
Oh, good. I'm excited. Well, good. That was somebody. My plate's pretty full with what I'm doing, as you can imagine. But this is what everyone needs to hear. The message is, every single person listening to this, and everyone on your channel, needs to understand, you don't need permission from the president or from me or anyone to go out and learn how to contact these civilizations. This is part of the sort of the mind control nonsense. Everyone thinks that we need some authority figure like the president to do this, or the government. Who needs the government to do this? I mean, they're so broken and dysfunctional. It's it's completely useless to think that they're going to fix this. They can't do anything right. I mean, look at what they've done with this crisis. They've totally bungled it, 100%. So
I agree.
100% bungled at the state, federal level, everywhere. So we need as a people to say, all right, here's the reality. We have proven that we're not alone in the universe. We're being visited. The government is completely dysfunctional. But here's something nice. I live right down the road from Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, of course. And it's we the people. We the people need to organize teams to go out, make contact. You don't need thousands of people. You can do it with 3, 4, 5 people. Learn how to make contact. And we also have a really cool training program that's on an app that we just released called the 𝗖𝗘𝗌 Contact app. And it's on the iTunes and Google stores. But it is a whole program for learning how to remote view, meditate, make contact with these civilizations, and form a team and guide them into where you're located. And we're getting reports from people all over the world who are doing this, where they're having ET craft and ET beings appearing with them. So if we can do that, let's just bypass the government and just fly right over, in a spiritual sense, over Area 51 and say, the way we're really going to storm that facility isn't with tactical nuclear weapons, but in the power of consciousness and people coming together. The power of this deeper aspect of ourselves, where the mind, whereby you're awake and I'm awake, as the physicist Erwin Schrödinger said, the total number of minds in the universe is one. It's a singularity. There's one conscious mind. And it's basically, it's like if you're in a big cathedral or a great big building and there's light streaming in from all these different windows of different shapes and colors. Each of us are like a window with that light shining in. And once we go into a state where we connect to the source of, say, that conscious light, we can see any place, be anywhere, achieve anything. And that's where, the power of the meditative state is so incredible. And that's, the science of consciousness. I don't know if you know who Dr. Russell Targ is, who is the CIA. He was the CIA remote viewer for 23 years who organized. He's a laser physicist, but he was part of a team doing conscious remote viewing of distant places using consciousness for the CIA. And I've had him on my show, and I said, look, what he had found is that every single human being can do this. You don't have to be Ingo Swann or me or him or anyone else. Everyone thinks, we've been taught that we're all just our own little selves. And there's an aspect of, individuals not connected to some larger field of consciousness. But in reality, the science of consciousness, which is what's in this documentary, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, shows that in fact the consciousness field is everywhere and isn't limited to your skull or your body. And once you center into that quiet state of consciousness, you can remote view another star system, another galaxy. And that's what we're doing. We're sitting out together under the stars doing this meditative process, remote viewing where these ETs are, and then inviting them to come. And that's what a close encounter of the fifth kind is. It's when humans initiate and invite the contact. The biggest problem with people doing it is that they're scared, because the disinformation, if you look at the first part of this movie you're referring to, the whole hoaxing of an alien threat, that is the key way they have controlled the masses. Because think about it. If people really believe that bullshit is true, they're not going to go out under the stars and say, invite them in. If they think, that's why it's so interesting. We had that Air Force officer say, hey, we used to organize these abductions.
Wow.
Go look at that testimony. So I have dozens of people who are on my team who have been on counterintelligence abduction squads, meaning that they were setting up scenarios to scare people about aliens, and they were hoaxing cattle mutilations, abductions, They were using man-made UFOs with these weird robotic creatures to abduct people and convince them they were alien abducted. But it's all being run by the intelligence community. And
so it's basically just propaganda.
It's a stagecraft, they call it. It's like when you it's like Hollywood staging an event, but it's the intelligence community zooming and deceiving the public. And of course, you know, Wernher von Braun, who invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler, on his deathbed, you know, he'd become part of the central part of our aerospace research community in the United States after World War II. You know, he told a member of my team, Carol Rosen, they're going to hoax an alien threat. And there isn't one, but they're doing all kinds of things to convince people there is one. And that's what the whole, you know, Space Force is about. And, you know, all this stuff, 99% of the material on the internet and in movies and documentaries about UFOs is all stuff that has been planted out in our popular culture to scare people and to convince them that we need to go to war eventually in space. So who would benefit from that?
Nobody.
You know, nobody. Well, yes, there would. The elitist, uber elitist cabal running unacknowledged special access projects and their sociopathic bedfellows who are these nasty military industrial complex warmongers, they're going to benefit. They always benefit. It's like when we invaded Iraq after 9/11, even though it had nothing to do with 9/11, you know, big corporations were making, you know, $1 trillion in taxpayer spending for a war we didn't need to have. Well, imagine that, but on a interplanetary level, where they could unite the whole world around a military fascist regime fighting some interplanetary threat that they are staging.
Like Ronald Reagan touched on in his speech.
Yeah, but that's what they've been doing. They've been setting up the conditions for that for 70 years. And I would say the vast majority of people who study this subject have been drinking that Kool-Aid, and they're totally brainwashed. So that's why the first part of the movie deals with this. And I'll give you a great example. The Air Force intelligence officer that was in charge of at Kirkland Air Force Base, who's in the movie, tells this account when, if you look this up, it's called the Cash Landrum case from 1981, I believe, or 86. It was in the 1980s outside Houston. Yeah. And there was a object, a UFO, that malfunctioned and was being escorted by helicopters as it descended, but it was spewing radioactive waste on all these innocent people who became very, very sick. It turns out that this man, whose testimony we have, was the principal investigator for Air Force intelligence for this event. And we have his testimony on camera, on tape, where he admits that from so-called Area 51, there was an ET craft that they were trying to test fly. And so they couldn't get the power, the energy system on it to work. So they put in a portable nuclear power plant on this thing.
That sounds like a great idea.
Stupid as shit, right? So they were putting this on there, and there were 4 human pilots on it. Now it's an ET craft with a man-made nuclear power plant on it, so they could get the propulsion working, and it was flying, and then it had a malfunction on the nuclear part of it, and it started leaking all this radioactive waste on these innocent civilians. And the Air Force was very happy for the public to think that that was a, quote, UFO. But which kind of UFO? Well, in this case, it was both an ET-1, manned by humans, with a man-made power plant that malfunctioned. So it was sort of a hybrid. And it was a disaster. But they were happy for the UFO research community and the media to report that this was a UFO that did this. And of course, all the xenophobic, paranoid kooks in the UFO world said that aliens are attacking us with nuclear waste. Actually, that came out of Nellis Air Force Base in Area 51, and it was 100% a man-made error. But they were trying to figure out how to fly this ET object. It eventually did land. It landed at an Air Force base in Texas, being escorted by helicopters. And if you look up this case, it's called the Cash Landrum case. Very well documented, but nobody knew until this Air Force officer came forward and admitted that it was us flying it and it malfunctioned. So that's the kind of stuff that goes on all the time. And you have to have a lot of patience to get to the bottom of what the truth is. And it takes a lot of work. And you need a lot of corroborating sources from different places to figure out who's providing you false information versus real information versus they don't even really know what they're talking about. So, you know, it's difficult. And that's been the biggest challenge we've had over the last 30 years of the Disclosure Project and doing what we're doing. But the thing that you can always count on is that if you go out with some buddies and friends and learn how to make contact and do it, and one shows up and you see it with your own eyes, or an ET, you know, like in the movie, there's that really cool ET that materializes in our circle in Arizona. And here, the guy who had lost his hearing as a child completely healed him of the hearing loss. That is so cool. We've had a lot of things like that happen. So I tell people, you know, why wait for the president or some authority figure that, frankly, most of them couldn't find their ass in a well-lighted room with both hands. They honestly don't know they don't know which way is up on this stuff. I tell people, go and find out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. Do it. You know, and to do that, though, you got to know what you're doing a little bit. You've got to understand the science of consciousness, and you need to understand that, you know, this thing, which, you know, we call a smartphone, which is really a very dumb phone, is using radio frequencies going at the speed of light.
Yeah.
Why is that a problem? Because if you're from Andromeda Galaxy, there's an ET in the movie we call Bijou that was at Joshua Tree National Park.
And he was from the Andromeda Galaxy.
He was from Andromeda, and I was there. I was right there when the photo was taken. And that's 2.5 million light years from here. So if you're communicating with what we call a smartphone at the speed of light, it would take 2.5 million years to get a signal from Earth to Andromeda and say, how are you? And then another 2.5 million years for the signal to come back. So it's 5 million years to say, hello, how are you? Fine. How are you? That exchange would take 5 million years, Earth years. That's why we know that the interstellar civilizations are using technology that go beyond the speed of light, but that are also interfacing with consciousness and thought. So in other words, it's like Elon Musk is working on something, a company he has, Neuralink.
Yeah.
I don't know, someone's typing, and I'm hearing them type. It's so weird that's coming through on the transmission.
I have no clue what's going on.
Yeah, it's really strange. So when they're communicating with electronic systems, but those systems are contacting conscious thought. It's really cool. So you think to your computer, it turns on. Now, Elon Musk is trying to make
absolutely incredible. It's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. But that's actually why we're able to use consciousness and thought to make contact. It's their primary communication system is consciousness. It's really amazing.
That's mind-blowing to think about.
Yeah. So I don't know, did you have some more questions? I mean, I've just been sort of like wrapping on.
I think we pretty much covered all the bases I wanted to hit. We got all my answers about Area 51, how we possibly storm it, just a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, here's how we're going to
feeling a little bit enlightened.
We're going to storm it by coming together as a people in consciousness and higher consciousness, making contact. And hey, if we can do a world cultural music event, that would be a weekend event. That'd be so cool. I've wanted to do it for years. I've just never had the ability to organize it and pull it off. But there are probably people who can, who are.
I've got the guys to do it. I think we can pull it off.
Yeah, I'm just a country doctor from Virginia. I don't. I can't pull off something like that. But there are probably organizers who can. It'd be an amazing event. I think it should be the Contact and Disclosure Music Festival is what I would conceive of it as, where we would have millions and millions of people wired in through the internet and hundreds of thousands of people at a place with the most amazing music lineup in the world, bringing people together with these concepts.
I think we could pull it off. I mean, over the course of 11 days, we gathered 12,500 people in Vegas. So we'll see if we can go even bigger.
Add a zero to that, and then let's do it.
Yeah, I'm down.
So 112,000. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it'd be a really fun thing to do. And so anyway, I wanted to thank you for your, what you're doing, raising consciousness with people. We need a lot of people who are in the 15-year-old to 40-year-old demographic to really get educated on this and figure out. I had a contact with an ET. I haven't shared this publicly. I don't know if I should, but I was at my place in DC, and it was in the wee hours of the morning, and an actual ET appeared in the bedroom and specifically said, because, I'm getting up there in years. I was a young doctor in my 30s when I started this project. Now, next month I'll be 65, and I have 4 kids and a 10th grandchild on the way and all that. And, I'm not long for, who knows how long I'll live. But the ET turned to me and said, you need to, how did he word it? You have to reach young people, and specifically gave me that 15 to like 30-some-year-old range. And they have to know about that. And it was like this very cool thing. So that's why I thought it was so cool that someone of your age, sort of just picked up the mantle and ran with this thing. So
it all works out beautifully.
Yeah, it's time to do that. Well, thank you for coming on. I enjoyed it. Hopefully we can meet at some point when the police state lets us out of our homes.
I agree. I think that'd be great.
Let's do it. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, man. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and so just put a shout out to your group about what we're doing, and we just need to all come together as a people and create. The end of the film is so beautiful because it's recounting when Colonel Corso met the ET there in White Sands, and he was a brash young military guy, and the ET was asking for their help, and he said, "What's in it for me?" And the ET goes, "A new world, if you can take it." That was 1956. I was 1 year old. And I tell people, you know what, 60 years later or whatever, we need to take it. We need to move on to an enlightened civilization that our destiny is to become interstellar.
That's a hell of a goal, and I think we can reach it.
We're going to do it. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, guys. And thanks all the people who have been helping in the background there. And we'll hopefully meet soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.